What do you consider the number one issue that you will face as you campaign for governor?
I really look at three. There you go. You ask a politician a question, he answers what he wants to. The top three I'm looking at are reforming education so that we're actually teaching kids with all this money we're spending. We're spending more than we ever have, adjusted for inflation, and yet our test scores and our learning is going down. We've got to get a handle on crime. I think we've made some real changes in St. Louis City with the new circuit attorney. Everything I hear is that he's doing the job and doing it well, but we have problems across the state. It's time that the citizens were no longer scared and the criminals were, and we got to get the size of the state budget under control. It's doubled in the last 7 years. It's $51 billion. I'm happy I don't get all the government I pay for, but we need to let the people keep more of that money and use it themselves. They're worried about how to pay for gas and put food on the table.
So how do the balance of powers work when it comes to stopping crime? Like, how much of that can be the responsibility of the governor's office? How much of that can be the mayors in these cities, the attorney generals? How do the checks and balances work?
Yeah, first and foremost, that should be a local issue. It should be should be taken care of by local courts and a local prosecutor. But when the local government is not doing their job, you cannot, as a state, say, well, too bad, the people of St. Louis are just going to have to deal with it. The state needs to step in. We need to support our police officers. We need to get more law enforcement officers on the street. We need to make sure that we have prison space for criminals. And we need to make sure that if prosecutors locally aren't going to prosecute, the state passes statutes, and we make sure they will prosecute.
It's always been my opinion, because gun violence is such a hot-button issue, the number one way, and it's kind of logical, to fight gun violence is the folks that have a pattern of committing gun violence should stay in jail. Every time you read about one of these, and I'm not talking about the mass shootings at the school. That's another tragic case. I'm talking about the day-to-day crime. You always read that this guy had a rap sheet, including 3 other gun charges, and you think to yourself, if a lot of the gun violence is perpetuated by people with a history of gun violence, maybe keep those guys in custody.
It is a truism that if you put the criminals in prison, they do not commit crimes. What we see on average in Missouri is when you release someone from state prison, they're going to return 8 or 9 times. We have judges that are sentencing criminals to 5 or 10 years, and they're doing months instead of years. That's a problem. We need to lock up the criminals so the good law-abiding people don't have to be afraid. And, you know, in St. Louis City, they talk about, well, we want to stop gun violence, take away the guns. No, because you're not taking them away from the criminals. You're taking them away from the law-abiding citizens that need to be able to defend themselves when the police can't get there in time.
Why aren't they staying in jail?
Part of it is we don't have room for them. We're having trouble hiring corrections officials. We've built prisons where we don't have a large local population so that we can hire workers. We have 2 prisons in Cameron, Missouri. Nice town, but I bet most of your listeners have no idea where Cameron, Missouri is. One of them is completely shut down. The other one is only staffed at about 60 or 70%. Realistically, every time we sentence a criminal to prison in Missouri, we have to let someone else go, regardless of whether or not they've done their time, they've been rehabilitated, or they deserve to go. That's a problem.
Wow. I mean, are they hardcore criminals letting out? Like, is there a lot of weed charges and stuff like that, guys?
You're really not seeing the weed charges being they're not the ones that are the problems we see as much, although the idea that drug crimes are victimless crimes is a fallacy, because the people that have the drug problems are the people that are breaking and entering, that are doing the burglaries. And maybe you say it's just property damage until they break into the house and the homeowner's there, and then you've got a murder on your hands.
Oh, yeah.
And our system right now really doesn't provide them rehabilitation of any kind. If you're a smart individual that's facing 4 years in prison or 120 days of drug rehab, and 120 days isn't long enough, you're going to take 4 years because you'll be out of custody faster with a 4-year sentence than if you're supposed to do 120 days of rehab. That's ridiculous, and we need to change the system.
When asked what you were campaigning on, the first thing you said was education, which I think is fantastic. When you talk about some of these tougher neighborhoods to try to make it so some of these kids don't become criminals, how do we get there? Is it education? Is it housing? What else can you do?
You know, there are a lot of different things we have to worry about. But if we want people to be able to get out of bad housing situations, to get out of bad neighborhoods, they need the job, they need the education to be able to do that. And we've seen places in this state where we've had generational poverty because they were stuck with a school that didn't teach their parent, and now they're stuck in that same situation. We need to empower parents to be in charge of where their kids go to school and let them deal directly with teachers, because teachers are the ones that provide education. That's what it ought to be, parents and teachers. Let's get rid of the administrators and everybody else that's in the way.
So you're in favor of school choice, which would mean vouchers where the money you get is transportable for parents whose kids are in a bad district and want better for them. Is that what you're saying?
It wouldn't just be vouchers for changing to a different district. I'm in favor of what I would call total educational freedom, where it's like an HSA where you have pre-tax dollars you put away, but you can only use those for health reasons. I'd like to see the money that the state would pay for your child's education go into that account. You can use that at your local public school for tuition. If you go to a good public school, you can use that for homeschooling. You can use that for tutoring. You can use that for a private school. I mean, I have 4 kids. My oldest son goes to the public high school, Capital City High School, and have 2 in Jeff City because it's good for him. My second son tried to be born at 20 weeks, was born at 25 weeks, was £1.25. He needs different help, and we have the ability to make sure that he gets that. The state should make sure that every parent in this state has the same ability to do that I have.
As I understand, the other side of the argument is if you allow that, then the poor districts, which have to get better, will end up having no students and then not enough to get funded properly, and then that.
Well,
that
I think it'd be great
really
if the districts that weren't doing well had no students. That's exactly what will happen. People will find better ways to get educated. Micro schools will pop up. You'll see independent schools that'll pop up in neighborhoods that have been left behind by neighborhood schools where parents want to go. Worst case scenario, we help some of the people, and then we have a smaller group of people that we can now look at to say, okay, that didn't help you. How do we help you now? I'm sick and tired of the idea that if we can't make sure that 100% of the kids are trained to be rocket scientists in our schools, we're not going to do anything for anybody. For generations, we've refused to make a change. Some of this is going to have to be iterative. We need to help who we can and then go back to help the next group and the next group. Otherwise, it'll never get done.
Man, back to the drug issue. I mean, this fentanyl, coming up Highway 44, it's out of control. It's out of control here. I mean, people I know that thought they were taking one thing, it was completely different. Yeah. It looks like gummies. They come in all kinds of different forms. Like, how do we stop this?
Well, you've got to quit it. You've got to stop it from coming into the country as best you can. We need to reevaluate whether it makes sense to essentially prohibit people from being able to buy testing strips that will tell them if there's fentanyl in things. I mean, I'm not sure I really understand what the logic is behind that. But you've got to push back against what's happening at our border. You've got to push back against China. I mean, you can't just sit on your hands because people's kids are dying.
They are. It's crazy. It's everywhere, mixed in with all kinds of different things. Where are we at right now as a country, in your opinion? I know you go through different waves, and I thought we were. The tightest after 9/11, we all came together. Then we went to the Iraq War, and then Afghanistan, and all kinds of different. Where are we at as a country right now, in your opinion?
I think we're extremely fractured. We have the people that hate the fact that America has been the world's lone superpower. They hate the idea of American supremacy. And then you have the other side of the coin that are just so grateful and thankful that they've been allowed to grow up in this country, and they want to make sure that they continue the values of this country for the next generation. And we've got to figure out how to work through that.
So we are a dumb sports talk show, but you are a candidate for governor, and one of the big issues is abortion. You're pro-life.
Yeah.
And as I read about you, there was some criticism over your wording of the summaries in regard to legislation that was trying to overturn the abortion law. I don't know a lot about it, but I wanted to ask you about it to explain where you are. What was that all about?
Well, the first thing I'd mention is that there was criticism, but if you look at the criticism, they never once write out the language for the initiative petition. You cannot honestly criticize a summary without talking about what it's supposed to summarize. My job as Secretary of State is to look at the language of the initiative petition and in 100 words, no more, explain that in a fair way. And a lot of people don't like the language, but what I tell them is read the initiative petition. This is a good summary of what the initiative petition does, and I can't just make language you would like if it doesn't actually summarize what the initiative petition is.
How do you balance that and your personal beliefs with also where the country is on that issue and potentially, or if it already has, hurt Republicans at the ballot box elsewhere, even if it maybe wouldn't do that in Missouri, and I don't know?
Well, first off, when we're writing that language, it's not just something I do. We have several people from different areas of the office with different backgrounds to try to look at it, not just for content, whether it's accurate, but look at, the level of reading capacity necessary to read it and how it might affect people from different backgrounds. But beyond that, I really can't look at how it's going to affect an election. What I swore an oath when I was sworn into office that I would follow the law. And the law says I'm supposed to look at what the actual language of the initiative petition is. I will roughly summarize that. Whether that helps me or hurts me, what it does at the election, that's not up to me to decide.
Another issue is voter ID.
Yep.
And I think this is a divisive issue because people label, he's a voter, denier or election denier, whatever. I believe in voter ID laws. I'm not sure exactly
It worked in November.
Yep.
What is your stance in terms of, one, how we do elections and what's fair in terms of allowing access for people that might not otherwise have access, and also making sure that every vote is legit?
When you're running elections, you need to worry about accessibility, you need to worry about security so it's hard to cheat, and you need to worry about credibility. For years and years and years, we just talked about access and security. But now I think we've seen that, hey, we need to make sure that there's visibility and transparency into the process so that people trust the results. I'm a strong believer in photo ID. We implemented photo ID in Missouri in a way where if you don't have one, we'll pay for you to get one for free to make sure that it's not stopping anyone from being able to vote. We used it in the November election. Things went smoothly. People were able to vote, and people had confidence in the election process. 4 or 5 years ago, Missouri would have been ranked 10th by the Heritage Foundation in our elections. We're now in the top 3. I'd love to see us do some things on requiring proof of citizenship to register and to vote. I'd love to see us do some auditing legislation and also require that you do a machine count for the rough count, and then you do a hand count audit so that you're using both the machines and the hand count to check each other. And I think Missouri will continue to lead in our elections.
People are asking on text about CRT, pushing CRT in our public schools. Some people think that it's a lot of, it's two sides of this. Some parents think that they see it, it's creeping through the schools. Other people say it's overblown. What's your take on CRT?
They're going to change the name as we fight it. I think that the solution is to let parents be in charge of where their kids are going to school, because when parents control the money, the school's going to have to be transparent with what they're teaching, and parents can make their own decision. And parents will have a wide variety of what they're looking for in a school, and they can find a school that works for their kid. We need to get the government out of that and get the parents in charge.
You touched on the southern border a little bit a couple questions ago, and I'm kind of like, I live in Missouri. I don't see it. And so that to me is more of like a New Mexico, Arizona, Texas issue. But how much does that actually have a trickle-down effect to all of the other states, and should we be paying heavily to it?
We should be paying attention to it. Look at what it's doing. We brought up fentanyl was brought up. That's coming through the southern border. The Chinese are using that. They're making money off of it. The cartels are making money off of it. It's a drag on our economy with all the costs for states dealing with these individuals. We need to be a country that prioritizes letting people in that are here for freedom and not for free stuff. America has been that shining beacon on the hill, but they need to come here with an understanding of the rule of law and the values that we adhere to. We don't want to become balkanized like some other countries have.
How do you make that distinction between who's coming for freedom and who's coming for free stuff?
Well, if you're just coming for free stuff, you come illegally. If you're coming here for freedom, you're willing to go through the process because you respect the rule of law.
How do you stop if you have thousands of people just ready to cross the border? Obviously, there are issues.
You build a wall.
Right, but also
it works for Nancy Pelosi at her house. It works at the White House. It works all over the place.
Thousands
it's
of
that
years
simple.
But I'm saying also from the folks coming from Central America through Mexico.
Yeah.
Is there more you can do with those other countries, or how do you get it so that those folks aren't coming to the border in the first place?
There is more you can do, but the first thing you do is you build the wall so it puts the pressure on those countries to act. Right now, they don't feel like they have to act because if we built that wall, then Mexico would say, wait a minute, we're going to have to deal with this problem. Right now, Mexico doesn't have to deal with that problem as much. They just say, yep, keep going north, go to the U.S., let them deal with it.
I think the scary part is what we're seeing in the Middle East now is we have open borders where people come in, we don't know who they are, and I think that should concern.
We know that we have captured hundreds of people that were on intelligence lists. The question is, how many have we not captured? You look at what happened in Israel with a security service that really works to keep that country safe, that has a real border there, and then you look at what we're doing, we are inviting trouble. And that is, sometimes I think that maybe U.S. citizens should have gotten together about $15 million and given it to Joe Biden before the Chinese.
My question is, and I think most Americans would like to see less divide. I mean, in my opinion, we're divided. People get angry on a number of different things on a list, and it almost seems like it was ginned up to get to this point. But Republicans and Democrats have to work together at some point. How do we get back to that where I understand, people work in the best interests of their parties, but how do we get back to where there's more working together for the betterment of the state, for the country, or whatever?
There is a decent.
We do that all the time, just so you know. It's all good.
There is a decent amount of that at the state level, but you also have to understand that there are issues where there just is not compromise. Whether you're pro-life or not, if you believe it's an individual human life, it's hard to say, go ahead and kill it, But if you don't believe that it's an individual human life, if you believe it's just a clump of cells, then it's easy to say, well, wait a minute, why is this any of your business? I think one of the things we need is more grace in politics, more of an understanding that none of us are perfect. It used to be we could have great political fights, but we understood that the other individual, what we would say, was just wrong, and they'd say, I was wrong, but we didn't think they were evil. And then also, I think more so than ever in our society, we have people that believe that not only are they right, but everybody else has to live their life the way they say they do. There's a lot of things that I really don't care about. If you do it with your own money, you're an adult in your own front yard. But when you come into my living room, I got a problem with it.
And that's why, I don't want to call some of these other things boutique issues because they could really matter to individual people. But I like the fact that the first three things you said, which were education, crime, budget, I feel like if both sides of the aisle just focused more on the things that kind of everybody agreed on, it would help, and it wouldn't just be so much infighting about. Again, these are big issues, but sometimes I'm like, we're spending 50% of the media oxygen on something that affects 1% of the population. And the stuff you're talking about affects everybody.
Or we have 1% of the population that is trying to force their beliefs on 99% of the population. Yeah. I mean, there are things that can be done that shouldn't be partisan. Although having said that, I think law enforcement has become partisan in the last 5 or 10 years, which I just can't understand. The idea that we would want to treat criminals better than law-abiding citizens just makes no sense to me.
So we understand your family legacy, obviously, but tell us about your background. Younger, when did you decide that you wanted to get involved in politics? Tell us about your background.
I was the 17-year-old son of one parent that was in politics and 2 lawyers that said, I'm never going to go to law school and I'm never going to go into politics. So I failed right off the bat there, I guess. I said, I'm going to get a real job, so I went into engineering. Graduated from the University of Missouri-Rolla, 2 degrees. Didn't start there, but didn't apply myself, so ended up at Rolla. Have a BS and MS from there. Went to work in the defense industry. That contract started to end. Took a position teaching at St. Louis Community College for about 6 years. While I was there, I got married. My wife wanted to go to law school. That's kind of when I went to the dark side. Figured she'd take good notes. She was always in class when she was supposed to be. That'd be the way to do it. And then was working as an attorney and just got fed up with who was running on the Republican ticket for a state Senate seat. That's how I got involved in politics, because I said we can do better. Some people would say I can't hold a job.
I just wanted to, I hate to interrupt. I was just going to ask you about what your take is on Donald Trump and his relationship with Republican candidates, because I think we saw it in the midterms that there were definitely some local races that were affected based off of how closely related those Republican candidates were to Donald Trump. Do you think that's toxic, or what's your take on that?
I think that Donald Trump has a lot of sway over, former President Trump has a lot of sway over Republican voters. Obviously, there is some disagreement about that because you're looking at the presidential primary, but right now it looks like he's going to run away with it.
Have you endorsed anyone on the Republican?
No, I haven't endorsed anyone. I really feel like I've voted for Donald Trump 4 times, but I haven't endorsed anyone. I'm hoping that with Missouri moving to caucuses and when our caucus date is, that we'll actually see some of those presidential candidates coming to Missouri. And I want to encourage every Republican candidate that I can to come to Missouri, spend their money in Missouri, and help us beat Joe Biden.
I agree with that. I know you got to get going, Jay. You got another interview. You probably got 15 more, so we don't want to keep you.
Smarter people.
We can keep you for a long time. We got a lot of questions. We do appreciate you coming on. We're going to go to break and regroup and get this guy out of here because he's got a lot more important interviews to do. Jay, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
Right on, guys.
Thanks. I forgot to ask him about sports gambling.
Gambling.
I meant to do that too.
I know.
I had that.
I know.
But we were into more interesting stuff. The sports gambling stuff will happen.
Yeah.
That's something I actually care about, though.
And a lot of people care about it, so we probably should have. But
Dang it.
I mean, we hit a lot of the main things, I thought.
That is a boutique issue, though, compared to crime and education.
No doubt.
And you know what? We got MyBookie, so you can just go to mybookie.ag.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Son of a.
Yeah, the text line was blowing up, too. Let's see. Nice.
You know what I liked about his approach is because coming in, I knew a little bit about Jay. And one thing I don't like about politics in general is our primary system, because I feel like in a primary, you have to cater to your group. So I feel like it's usually way more extreme and way more divisive in a primary. I love the fact that he came on with very substantive issues. The first things he said was education, crime, budget. That's something that everybody agrees with. For the most part, a huge swath of Missourians.
So happy he didn't just spout drag queens and this and that. I'm like, no, he's actually talking about issues that people are seeing on a day-to-day basis. That I appreciate it.
So it's always entertaining to me that once you get through the primary, where the candidate either sprinted to the right or to the left, and then it's a general election, and they have to disown the stances that they just took to win a primary and have to just kind of moonwalk back to the middle.
Yep.
It's hilarious. It's good theater.
It's great in Missouri, too, because you always see it, especially, look, we know Missouri's red and whoever runs for Republicans is going to win. But it's always funny in the Republican primaries, that's when all the guns come out and the Eric Greitens commercials with the machine guns, and then it shifts to the stroller on the street. You know, it shifts from the guns to the family pushing the stroller down the street the second you go from primary to general.
So with Greitens,
and everyone does that.
And I'll be honest, I had no idea who Greitens was. And he started running. I don't think a lot of people knew. I remember he was sort of like this candidate that came out of nowhere in the beginning. Maybe I'm wrong historically. But I just remember getting in my email a picture of this guy firing off a Gatling gun, like for a minute and a half. And I was like, who is this guy? And how did he decide my email needed to have his video? Like that would, who are you voting for? The guy with the Gatling gun.
That's normal.
Who thought that I would immediately
I don't know.
jump in on that? Do I have a history of buying weaponry?
That's how they get you subscribe emails. I have so many damn emails.
I can't handle it.
Literally. I spend my whole day unsubscribing. I don't even know. You buy one product.
Oh.
Or somebody visits a website, and all of a sudden you get 5,000 emails.
Or
How
if my
about this?
wife does.
Or you say, hey, E, what about an air fryer? Do you think we should get an air fryer? And all of a sudden you Google something and the ad for an air fryer comes up.
Jimmy, I thought about an air fryer. I thought about it. Didn't say anything. And it popped up on my phone.
Is that China or Putin?
That's China. And Putin. God, I thought about it. Scared to hell. I go, what? They're in my brain, Jimmy. And I don't like it. I don't like it. Does he have a mute button, question mark? Why does he care, question mark? Innocent people and kids are being killed. Royals fan Kyle. You didn't say anything.
Was that at me?
Yeah, no, you're just, no, it's all good, man.
About what?
The border. Because I said
no.
I don't see it on a regular basis.
Well, I also think that is probably kind of your bubble because the border.
yeah.
Well, just hear me out.
Okay.
The border has become a national story. Why? Because now in New York, they're saying they're going to go bankrupt from handling the migrants. In Massachusetts, they're declaring a state of emergency because of the influx of migrants in Chicago. It's a huge issue. So it isn't just Arizona and Texas anymore. It's gone across the country.
Martha's Vineyard.
And now it's it's more of a national issue, I think, for more people now because of that.
It was kind of a self-serving question. I asked for my own education purposes, but hopefully somebody else out there had the same question.
Oh, I think by far that's the Democrats' worst issue. By far.
Oh, yeah.
And they may lose on that alone, not just the fact that Biden is pushing the funeral, essentially. But that's an issue that a lot of Democrats don't understand the party's strategy on the border. Like
Yeah.
most people, I think, again, most people are like, yeah, we're cool with legal immigration, and you do need workers, but what are you doing right now? Like, honestly, I truly believe that's the Democrats' worst issue.
Why pretend that the border is closed when it's not? I don't understand the end game on that. And I do think the wall issue is like Trump and Trump haters, and that's it. But there is something to be said with a structure that at least slows down the flow,
yes.
right? And Biden is now building part of a wall for that very reason. I mean,
Slows it down.
Mayorkas, who said the border's closed, said there's immediate need. He had to back away from that to stop the flow because we can't handle all those people. So I don't understand why that became. I mean, Trump made a lot of mistakes. We get Mexico to pay for it, and they were never going to pay for it. I get a lot of the chirping and the criticism, but you want to stop the flow because right now they can't handle. And as I've said before, it's a story no one talks about, but literally hundreds of people have died on that border.
Or missing children.
Why wasn't I truly don't know the answer to this. Why wasn't he able to build it or build more during his presidency?
He built a lot, but I forget. I think he was fighting legal battles. He was getting sued every time he turned around.
How much did he
wall.
spend? It was like, remember he proposed it was going to be like $2 billion? And everybody's like, wow.
And those pieces of the wall sat there, and the government, as I understand, and I did vet this, was selling off the materials that were just sitting there for pennies on the dollar
To
just
China.
to get it out of
To
there.
China.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, but I remember them people bitching about so much money. I'm like, just throwing money
And the
around,
border,
like,
you would think, especially now with the unrest in the Middle East,
good God.
you'd want to close the border.
I know.
Like I just don't get it. If you go to an airport to fly, they check you every which way, to see who you are, and then if you just walk across, no one cares who you are, and that's
weird.
truth. That's not a Republican talking point. That's fact.
Do you know anybody that's like, no, I want open borders?
I do not.
I don't think I do. Do you?
No.
Where are they at?
But we have. I mean, do we all agree that the border's open right now?
It's open.
Because even if they catch you, and a lot of people they don't really vet you, and you get a hearing notice
And you don't go.
for 7 years down the road because our system is overrun.
Yeah, they're overwhelmed. They're arresting the same people over and over.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between an asylum seeker and someone who wants to come here because they can make more money in
Dreamers?
this country. There's a difference, and it should be reformed. There's no question we need immigration reform. But the first thing you do is stop people coming in illegally.
Yeah.
I think we would all agree with that. And originally it was, well, there's no fentanyl coming. It's coming through the ports, except that's been debunked.
You know who had a
Coming right up 44, baby.
who had a good take on this, or a good solution, I think, was when RFK Jr. has been asked about this, he basically said, so a lot of people are obviously coming in and to do bad things. A lot of people are coming in to work. And a lot of people are obviously working illegally. And a lot of people are being hired illegally. And it's very easy, apparently, to falsify whatever card you need to say, hey, I'm a citizen, hire me. And so RFK Jr. was basically saying, if we create, and it's kind of like what Jay Ashcroft said, because the whole thing about photo ID is more on the Democrat side about it not being a poll tax, meaning it has to be free and super easy for everybody to get, because otherwise poor people would have less access. That's the true argument from the left. But I'm saying RFK Jr. said, if we make sure everybody in the country has this ID, then we punish companies that are actually hiring the illegal workers. There will be much less incentive for all these folks to come to the United States of America to work. They won't be able to illegally unless they come in the proper way.
Two things. Even with a free ID, which is what Jay said, which I've heard proposed in other states too, you will get people say, no, that's not good enough because people can't get there. But you need an ID to do anything.
To do anything.
It's true. Like, you need an ID of some sort. So the backlash against that, I don't understand. And what he said about immigration is true. But if you look at the job numbers, like, there's still millions of open jobs in this country that people don't want to do. So there are companies that are pro-illegal immigration because they want cheap labor. Big, powerful companies. So you can put it on this person or that person, but there's a lot of things that work with our open borders.
I should ask them about Bidenomics and if they're working.
There's a couple. There was a lot we could have got into, man. We were flowing pretty good with him. He was cool. That was cool.
He's also a state politician. I love getting these guys' takes on the national issues, but he's running in the state of Missouri.
But
that's also a different.
He threw it in at the end, though.
What's that?
He threw it in at the very end. We need to defeat Joe Biden.
Yeah, well, he's a Republican. But, he's also in a I don't want to say easy, but it's true. Missouri has gotten redder and redder. Whoever wins that nomination on the Republican side is going to be the governor. It's like the city of St. Louis. Once you get through the primary, we all know the Democrat's going to win.
Yeah. Well, they're doing good down there. Cole's 100% correct with these teams virtue signaling and or taking sides. We're against car wrecks. We stand against car wrecks. Jay in Texas.
I found the one. All right, so this isn't like my
People
youth
agree with
sports
you.
don't teach you lessons.
Well, that was stupid.
I found look.
And I'm not trying to crush Cole, but the owner of the Heat was born in Tel Aviv, Israel.
I found the Bucks and the Jazz, and I could come up with more, but I'm stopping at 2. I found a couple examples with non-Jewish owners who.
How do you know?
I went and researched it. The Jazz owner.
What if they converted?
Ooh.
No, he's Mormon.
Ooh.
The Jazz, which I guess that would be fitting geographically.
Stereotype.
Every time I think of Mormon, I think of you, and I think of
Think of me?
What?
for some reason because you talk. Remember we had that conversation about Mormons?
Oh, about
And soaking.
Soaking.
Oh, that's a drop somewhere in the Nate folder. I think I can find that.
Last night that poor Baltimore starter got shelled, and immediately after the broadcast, they brought up all of his families trapped in Israel. Oh God.
Ugh.
Yeah, he got lit up. Man, yeah, I don't know. That's
So, if I may weigh in on this and just the American response, like, I thought, I try to give President Biden credit when he deserves it. Like, I have.
yes, no.
Doing that fine line between expanding the war and getting more of us involved.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was pretty well spoken and was assertive in his defense of being against terrorism and the
he
attack.
was staunch. Yep. Yep.
But I do wonder now. There are Americans apparently I haven't being held captive.
Kids.
Okay, and so this is another fine line that he's going to have to walk, because if this had happened in anywhere else in the world, there'd probably be a different response. But if the United States says no, we're going in and getting our people out, that could touch off a bigger firestorm.
What do you do?
Don't we already have SEALs headed there?
I hope so.
I'm talking about we're gonna bring a ton of American, because they haven't committed to American boots on the ground. Advisory people, as I understand.
So the
U.S.
whole,
Special Operations Forces hostage rescue experts are assisting Israeli forces.
Yeah, experts, meaning they're not supposedly boots on the ground. They're advisory, as I heard one of the Biden
So was it
officials
debunked
say
them
yesterday.
coming in with parachutes and in a festival? Like, is that debunked? Like, do we know?
No, the
Really?
festival thing was true.
Okay.
They came in hang gliders.
I just know the festival was a huge target. I don't know how they came in.
But that's what he's saying, because there was video that went viral
Yeah.
of these, and I saw that was debunked. And that doesn't mean
Yeah.
There weren't some terrorists that hang glided in, but that video of the sky full of then I was thinking, too, in retrospect, like, if you were going to attack something, you probably don't want to do it with hang gliders because you're in the air as a target for a while.
Yeah. People aren't armed there, though. You know what I mean? No one's holding. Can you have a conceal and carry in Israel walking around?
Apparently, gun control laws are strict in Israel.
Yeah. Interesting.
I did read that. That, like, the average family doesn't have guns.
Yeah. Let's see here. Somebody wanted to know. Jay, if Megan Green and her colleagues are gracious enough to allow us to take dumps in public, will the state provide us with toilet paper? That was a good question I was going to ask him. I wasn't going to ask him that. But
So you can now take dumps in public?
Yeah. Downtown's cool.
What about peeing?
Yeah. Both.
That's always been allowed?
Well, you can't do it.
I
You'll get-
can't?
No, you'll get arrested.
Why?
I'll get. You're not homeless. Only homeless.
What if I identify as homeless?
You're also
Well, if
using
you
the
wear
wrong.
You wear those sweatpants.
You're also using the wrong word.
Oh no.
Unhoused.
Unhoused people. My bad.
So you're telling me that just homeless people can go to the bathroom?
Unhoused.
I think so. Something like that.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. I don't know.
Not hobos, not homeless, unhoused.
Unhoused. You know, that's a BS answer. Not all family can afford private schools. Government is involved if parents complain and they are deemed terrorists. Schools need to be cleaned up, not far left playground bone.
Actually, and that is pro-Republican, is the school choice. Democrats, as I understand it, for the most part, are against that. The thing that does kind of back up that argument is the rich folks can put their kids in a private school wherever they want, and if you're in a city, maybe don't have a lot of money, you're kind of hamstrung. Your kid has to go to that school, and if the school isn't good, sorry.
What's up with the audio? You guys' voices sound crazy. Are we sound a little better now, guys? I only heard one person bitch about
Only
that so
saw one
far.
text, so I assume we're all right.
All of our
Just
voices?
I'm just asking.
Beats me.
You guys realize that the state of Missouri would get $200+ million for education if sports betting was legalized? Classy boy.
That's the thing. That's the point.
I know. What are we doing?
And the other thing is, I find it funny that, I mean, St. Louis, going to the boat was a thing. Like you had these boats. Oh, it's got to be a boat. Oh, okay, we'll just build a casino near a
puddle.
river. Oh, it looks like a boat. Okay, now it's got to be close to water. It's the dumbest thing ever.
so dumb.
And speaking of open borders, we have an open gambling border. Our open gambling border is everybody from Missouri driving over the bridges and placing their bets in Illinois and taking all of that revenue to a different state.
I did that for
ridiculous.
the first
But you should
time
go to
on Saturday.
mybookie.ag.
There you go.
I did that for the first time on Saturday, all to just lose $1.
And now Circa. You see all the ads? Because Circa is now in Illinois, up in Chicago, but you can bet on their app even down here.
So how does
In the
that
South.
work? If it's illegal in a state, but you can still bet off an app, how does that work?
No, it's legal. I'm saying my bookie is offshore, but I've never had one problem getting money out of there. I've gambled my bookie for 10 years.
So if it's offshore, I'm just trying to understand the legal ramifications.
It's in Aruba.
So they can't touch that.
It's different. It's different laws. So, but I'm saying
Did you get arrested?
no, not at all. But
Because I'd like to see that.
obviously, Missouri, that app, whatever it is, DraftKings, Circa, it does not work in the state of Missouri until you, boom, GPS are in the state of Illinois, and then you can fire it up. I mean, people are literally driving over the bridges, stopping in parking lots, and placing their bets for the weekend football.
That's exactly what I did.
It's ridiculous. And then you
And sending all that money to Illinois.
Yes. Illinois, you got my $1.
with the events in Israel and how our border has been opened up to our enemies, we are looking at a real-life Red Dawn situation. Hamas in Israel is a distraction after the current administration has depleted our oil reserves and our ammo cache. It's coming. Charlie's OPS Plus.
Well, I wouldn't say Red Dawn. Red Dawn was a giant invasion. I'm talking about terrorist cells that may be here, likely are here, and will do damage.
I mean, no
Let me
offense.
just tell you something. The United States is never going to run out of any of those things you just talked about. That's what our economy is built on.
What, Red Dawn?
No, the military. I know saying military-industrial complex is like a big buzzword. That's never going away. Believe me, we will find a war to fight somewhere
Hey,
at all times.
Imagine they came down with those paratroopers in our backyard. We're like, oh, ding, 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 ding. I mean, it'd be pretty tough. Come on
What
down.
was the stat
Come on.
the other day?
Come on a little closer. I got him.
What was
I was
the
going to
stat?
shoot that balloon out of the
Excuse
sky.
me, Secretary of State Ashcroft. What's your take on spy balloons hovering over Missouri?
Staring at me for 40 minutes.
In Cam's backyard?
In my backyard with my puppies. I don't like it.
What was the stat the other day we looked up and said Washington, D.C. was it the most wealthiest suburb in America or whatever the neighborhood was?
Percentage of billionaires.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? That's all those contracting companies are right there.
Right there
They're
with their lobbyists, yeah.
They're lobbying the crap out of Democrats and Republicans. Which is why when Vivek said you're all bought and paid for, I agree with them. Even if they don't know it. They basically enter a system. They don't even realize that you're now bought and paid for. Because the second you get in, you need money to run. And if you don't do what they say, they're not going to give you money.
That's why you support Trump.
Who, me?
Yeah, because he's independent. No one owns him.
Are you familiar with Citizens United?
What is that, a PAC?
That's why we have corporate money in politics. That's a huge problem.
Huge.
Huge problem. It is.
The people that want open borders are the same ones that want to allow open-air drug use and sidewalk crapping. They live in gated communities secured with the public tax money. Cray-cray. I still haven't met anybody that's like, no, keep those borders open. Woo, doggy. Where are they at?
I think the people who want open borders hate this country,
Mm-hmm.
so they want to see the face of it changed. And I think there are people that don't pretend that they're not for open borders, but deep down are, but circumlocute their argument so they don't have to admit they're for open borders. It seems like it's a winning campaign issue for the Republicans. Are they smart enough to make it work?
Where we at, homies? Where we at?
That's who you need to ask right there, Andy. Just ask Andy. He'll tell you. You should have asked who would win in a fight, Trump or Biden.
We should have.
That would have been hilarious.
Very well done.
You should ask who's more cardiovascularly fit.
Sure. You know.
All right,
one can walk and one can't.
Whose drops are funnier, Biden's, Trump's?
Ooh, I don't know. We got some doozies on both sides.
We talked about this a little bit after the show yesterday. RFK going independent hurts who more?
Republicans.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
Oh, I guarantee it, because first of all,
Frank, I hope you're listening.
his so the vaccines became a political issue, okay?
Shocking.
Well,
There people have their own thoughts, but generally speaking, there were more Republicans were anti-vax, and more Democrats said you should wear the mask and have a Ukraine. I'm just joking, but those are the two. There's a political association with that, and with the stuff that Kennedy said about vaccines, no Democrat, generally speaking, less Democrats would find that appealing, where more Republicans would. So to me, I think more Republicans who hate Trump, if he's the nominee, which it looks like he will be, Republicans would gravitate, that hate Trump, would gravitate to Kennedy more so than Democrats who don't like Biden, or in my opinion, Gavin Newsom, who will be the Democratic nominee because of his vaccine stance. To me, that's who I look at.
I think,
And the polling backs it up, by the way.
I think, in my opinion, I think way too many people, and I understand why, way too many people, the first thing you hear with RFK Jr., they immediately think vaccine. And if you listen to the man talk, he won't even bring it up usually, unless somebody else brings it up, and he's happy to talk about it. But I think if you listen to the man talk, he's really discussing substantive issues that affect the middle class, the eroding middle class, and poor people in America. He has a very unifying message. He's not divisive at all. And here's the other thing. I think this kind of plays into Ron DeSantis and maybe why Ron DeSantis hasn't caught steam. Ron DeSantis did great in Florida during the pandemic. Whether you like him or not, people really liked what Ron DeSantis did for COVID, and he won by 20 points. People really liked what Mike DeWine did in Ohio, and he won by 25 points. Listen, I know COVID is still in the back of our memories. I think running on all COVID vaccine 4 years after COVID, to think this is now like this top tier issue, I don't think it is. I really don't. And I think when you hear RFK, so many people think vaccine. If you listen to the man talk, he rarely talks about it. And his message is very unifying. And it's very like,
I like him.
It's housing, it's education. It's basically corporations are taking all of the money. It's interest rates. It's our middle class is going away.
Cool.
It's our workers aren't making money.
I would vote
905
for RFK over Biden in a heartbeat. Okay,
So would I.
but it's not what he says. It's what is brought up by the media.
I understand
and if
that.
you Google RFK, they bash him for his vaccine stance. So it's out there. So do people understand that there's maybe more nuance to a stance on vaccines? When it comes time to vote, a lot of them won't. They're just going to be, oh, that's the anti-vaxxer guy, so I'm not voting for him.
And he's not even particularly against the COVID vaccine. It's more just the pharmaceutical.
It's for-profit vaccines.
There you go. So it's everything as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, he has individual takes on all of these things. Like I said, though, listen, if somebody wants to tell me the crazy thing that he said that is disqualifying, let me know. I've heard a lot of crazy things from Biden, and I've heard a lot of crazy things from Trump, and I don't hear anybody disqualifying them. And again, I've listened to the man on 4 podcasts for hours, and he seems very, very reasonable. But a lot of people aren't listening to podcasts. A lot of people go to cable news where the left side don't even put him on unless it's CNBC for like more of an economic story. And now Fox News for years put him on, but now they're attacking him, of course, because now he's in as an independent. And I think both sides feel threatened by him.
I will say, I mean, what you're saying isn't incorrect, but the reality is, and I'm just going by your question, who will it benefit? I think it benefits Democrats to have him in there. I don't think that was the original thought process, but I think that's how it's going to shake out.